On this episode of the podcast, we talk about strategy first production. We also talk about possibly the best growth hack. I'm not going to give it away just yet. And then finally, the value of having a clearly defined prospect. This is episode 278 of the Grow Your Video Business podcast. What is up, friend? Hey, I am Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the Grow Your Video Business podcast, the show for corporate and commercial filmmakers that are wanting to build a business without burning out. On this show, we cover topics like how to get more clients, how to charge what you're worth, how to work smarter, not harder. You are not alone, my friend. As a commercial filmmaker myself, a business owner, I've been doing this work for 17 years. I am here to help guide the way, sharing with you all of the things I've done right and all of the things that I haven't done well at all. I'm very excited to share with you my guest today, Josh Usheroff, who is a filmmaker in Canada. I mean, this is like an international show, you guys. Seriously, pretty awesome. If you haven't heard, the Onward Summit, the doors are open. You can register, come hang out in Lake Orion, Michigan, near Detroit at the Studio Sherpas World Headquarters. Hang out with me and a bunch of other commercial filmmakers that really are wanting to improve the business side of their business and want to connect with other people. The side conversations that happen throughout this entire event are incredibly valuable. The sessions that we have are going to be really, really good, challenging, thought-provoking. It's a great time to work on your business, not just in your business. You can find out all the things about the event if you go to studiosherpas.com/onward. And before we jump into the episode, I do want to let you know that I have a free gift for you. When we run our client meetings, we use a step-by-step method so that we don't need to rethink the process every time. That's one of the greatest lessons that I've learned in running a video business is having processes, things that you can lean into, so that when it comes time to actually do the thing that you're like amazing at, which in this case is like creating awesome videos for your clients, it might not be like, doing your taxes or, being on the phone or running a Zoom call or running an in-person meeting. That might not be your sweet spot. You might just be intimidated and maybe you don't like speaking in front of people. Listen, if you have a process for how to do meetings like that, when you're with clients, when you're in new places with intimidating type people or seemingly intimidating type people, if you have a process, a way to run your sales meetings, your confidence goes through the roof. And so the Ascend method is it's the way that I've been running my meetings for years. And I want you to have this step-by-step guide called the Ascend method. And I also, so I've got a cheat sheet for you. And then I've got a little video that I walk you through this process and how we do it, how it is effective for us, how it's allowed us to have the confidence to be able to tell a client that, hey, this project is going to cost $20,000 or it's going to cost $100,000 and to not like apologize for that. So I want you to have it. You can go to studiosherpas.com/ascend. It is a 6-step method. We call it the Ascend method. Get it at studiosherpas.com/ascend. Okay. That's enough. Let's actually get into the meat of the show because there's a lot of good stuff in here. I really, really like Josh's perspective, and I think you're going to enjoy it too. Let's roll the tape, get in the episode. Here we go. What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to this episode of the podcast. Today with me is Mr. Josh Usheroff, who is the producer and cinematographer at Black Box Productions in Montreal, Canada. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. Very excited to be here today.
Me too. What I want to say when people say that is, why don't you tell it to your face? But I figured that probably doesn't come off the right way. But I do think that's funny.
Do I look like I'm not excited to be here?
Not at all. But I'm just saying, like, that's something that I want to say to people so they can be like, wait, what's going on right now? I'm so happy to be here. I am so happy that you're here. This is great. Dude, you've got a cool brand. You've got a lot of experience, and I'm excited to introduce you to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about the business that you run.
Sure. So I run Black Box Productions, which is a strategy-first creative production company. We primarily do commercials and promotional content for agencies and brands. For most of the projects, I am the producer and cinematographer. And then my business partner, Ben, is often the director on our projects and more responsible for the creative side of things. And also he heads our post-production.
Awesome. And how did you guys start this thing together? Like, how did you get your start?
Well, I have known Ben literally my whole life. Our parents met when they were pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
And we grew up down the street from each other. And
awesome.
So we've been longtime friends. And we both independently had an interest in production. And about 14 years ago, he was working at CBC editing their news. And I had a 9-to-5 job that I was leaving to start doing production full time. And so we talked a little bit about joining forces and starting a production company. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Hey, I like it. That's so fun. What a cool opportunity to be able to work with somebody like that you've known forever. What I'm sure the journey has been interesting. You guys been doing this for how long?
14 years.
14 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, we started in September 2008. Yeah.
What would you say is one of the biggest? I mean, you're working with agencies and you're doing some big and cool stuff today. At what point do you feel like the business kind of shifted from, the grind, the hustle, doing all of the things, trying to figure out like what you guys really wanted to do? Was that out of the gate, or was there like a moment in your history that was like, no, this was kind of a defining moment for where we wanted to take this thing?
I don't know if there was one specific moment. I mean, I can think there are a few projects along the way that were kind of like definitely leveling up and like bigger teams, bigger crews, bigger clients. But really, if you look at the big picture, it was just about having patience. And basically, like, I like to think that patience is like the best growth hack. We were sort of like always looking at sort of incremental improvements and incremental growth. Good work leads to more good work, and sort of playing the long game and trying to get the compounding benefits of our labor. So I heard that statement from Scott Martin, who runs Groundswell Marketing, and he said, patience is the real growth hack. And I think that's totally true. You've got to stick with something long enough for that like snowballing effect to kind of catch up to you.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. I feel like in today's day and age, it only because we see, everybody's on social, it doesn't take much at all to hop on and say like, oh man, like I'm doing 6-figure production jobs. It's like, wait, oh, okay. How did you get there? Like, what's the magic bullet? It's like, you just got to know the right person or do the right thing. It's like, I mean, sometimes, but probably in a lot rarer cases than for most of us.
Yeah, there are a handful of productions I can think about that were really like, after we got the green light, it was like, okay, now we have to figure out how to actually do this.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's sort of like, well, we did something really similar to this, but a bit on a smaller scale. And so you just kind of like build confidence with each project you do. And, build a better reel with each project you do. So that attracts better clients at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I didn't realize, look at us matching kind of today.
Outfits?
Did we
oh, yeah. I knew that's what you were going to wear, so I figured I'd try to.
I have a question. So let's say Ben isn't in the picture and you are to start fresh today. You start brand new.
Okay.
What would you do? Where would you start?
Where would I start? With the experience that I have today, but starting a new.
Let's say no, you don't have this experience, but you've got a drive and a passion to get into video production. Maybe a dream of working with agency clients, but like, what the heck are you going to do today to get this thing going?
So, I think my advice to anybody who's just starting out in the business is to try a bunch of new things until you know what it is that you want to do. Like, I'm not the only one that says that, but I think it's very important to get a variety of different experiences on set. So, you might work in the art department one time, and in the gaffer department another time, and in the lighting department, and just get a variety of experience. You can kind of see how it all works. When I was starting out in production, I was lucky to have a mentor. His name is Sash Balin Stern. He's a good friend and a talented producer, and he was producing like 70 some music videos a year of high quality, productions. And so we were working on these music videos. I started as a production assistant and then worked up to a production manager. And it was a great opportunity to kind of see how the productions were run, to be able to work with the director when they're on their first location scout and understand what they're thinking, to ask the cinematographer a question about why they're going to use a certain kind of lens or a certain kind of light, to know like the technical requirements of those lights are too powerful to run off a regular plug, so we're going to need an electrician to do a tie-in or a generator or those kinds of things. So I think like part of it is try a bunch of different things, and the other part of it is sort of learning from the best. Even if you want to run your own business, if you find the production company in your town that is the best at their game at what they do, and you go and offer your services either as a production assistant or in some kind of like logistics capacity where you can shadow a producer, it really gives you a sense of how the larger scale, more established production companies operate. And it also might give you confidence if you're like a one-person run-and-gun type shooter where you're doing sound and lighting and interviews and directing, to see what it looks like when there's a team of 20 people on set with very specialized positions. And then you can kind of, next time you go back to your client, say, you know what, we might benefit from having a makeup artist or a sound technician and sort of building your team. So I would say, my advice is try a bunch of different things, learn from the best people in the industry so you can sort of see how that works, and then apply it to your own craft.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's so good. I talk about niching down and picking an industry or a type of video that you can specialize in. But when you're just starting out, like it's I don't know if that's the best advice, because really you got to figure out like what job or jobs do you like? Are you good at? Are you drawn to? And then in the opposite, like which ones do you never want to touch or do? You might hop in a production that's got 20 people and realize like, that's like too stressful. I can't imagine being a part of that. Like I want to, lot smaller scale. Or you hop into an event, a live event where like everything's on the line. You got to get the shot and the pressure is sky high. I thrive in those situations. Like I love that. I love the pressure. But other people are like, like that's like way too stressful. So I love that advice of just trying all of the things and really trying to settle in on what gets you most excited. But also like, what do you think you could turn into a sustainable business?
Yeah, I think you'd hit the nail on the head about the idea of finding your niche or specializing or becoming the expert at something once you figure that out. Yeah. So early on in the game, it's really about trying as many different things as possible. It's understanding how the whole production ecosystem operates. But once you have that base knowledge and like, this is where I'm most interested in, this is what I really want to excel at, this is what I know I can be an expert at, then you really want to focus on that and say no to everything that isn't that. Like I think you have to turn down and push away the things that you're not interested in doing to make room for the things that you can really be good at. And one thing I'll say about that in terms of people just starting out, you have to be aware of being pigeonholed, like by producers and by other people. If you keep getting called as a gaffer on set, but you really want to be a director, at some point you have to make it known to the people that are calling you, like, that's not really where my interests lie, and you have to, start turning down those jobs or let them know where you would rather fit within the organization. Because once people know of you and think of you in a certain role, it's very easy for them to only call you for that thing and not think of you in the new thing, which is what you're more interested in.
Yeah. So let's kind of keep that mindset. You're just starting out. Josh, you're just starting out, and you're trying a bunch of different things, trying to figure out like what do you like doing, what don't you like doing. But then how do you go? Like, let's say you land somewhere, and how are you going to go about like getting business?
Well, for me, I landed in cinematography. That's really where I was like most interested in. And I kind of, in a sense, built a production company so that I could have an excuse to keep shooting. For a large extent, like
Smart man.
I wasn't necessarily getting other people calling me specifically for cinematography. So I was like finding the clients, working with my business partner, Ben, who's a really good director. And then I still got to do the shooting part of it, which for me was like the most, let's say, creatively rewarding and kind of challenging. How you find those clients is a real challenge, especially early on. And I don't know that I have the answers totally. Like, I think a website and a demo reel definitely helps. We have always just been sort of lucky that our growth was organic. It was really through word of mouth, through referrals, through repeat business, and we have pretty good SEO. If you search Video Production Montreal, Black Box Productions is on the first page. So we get a lot of inbound inquiries. And it's been a long time since I've had to do outbound kind of sales and prospecting. But there is one story that I'll tell you about very early on in the business. I was looking for work in Craigslist ads. I don't even know if Craigslist still exists anymore, but you know what that is, right? So I saw a Craigslist ad in search of a Steadicam operator. And I am not a Steadicam operator, but I responded and I said something to the effect of, hey, I'm not a Steadicam operator, but I do have a very, very steady arm. Do you want to meet?
Similar, definitely.
And the producer agreed to meet with me, and I got to understand his concept. It was like this half-hour home and garden style show. It was actually like an infomercial to sell the homes that this couple was like touring and pretending to want to buy. But they didn't need a Steadicam operator. But he did need a bunch of other production experience. So I came on as the cinematographer on the project, and I brought my partner Ben on to direct and edit the episodes. And so our first major project, I think we filmed 2 seasons of the show, started from me responding to an ad that I was totally unqualified for. I didn't lie. I'm not advising your listeners to lie and pretend you're a Steadicam operator if you're not, but have confidence in your abilities and be bold and take that step to reach out to something that might be outside of your skill set, but you think you could still help with. I know, Ryan, I've heard you talk about hungry being one of your core values. Does that count as being hungry?
Yeah, I think that's great. I hate the fake it till you make it. I think the more I hear that, or at least the positioning of that, I'm like, I don't agree. I'm similar to you where I would be totally honest. I would, if I'm hungry, I'm like gonna go after this and just say like, hey, I haven't done this. Like, I don't know how to operate. I'm willing to learn. Like, I can figure it out. I'm really good, like on my feet, kind of like positioning myself like that, versus like, oh yeah, totally. I can run the Steadicam and then figure it out. Like, I just feel like there's like a little. I mean, it's very subtle in that, but I think people appreciate honesty, and in the case of this producer that hired you, it turns out he didn't even need that, right? But it's more just like, hey, here's where I can, like, let's have a conversation and let me figure out what are your big pain points and your big problems. And I think that's a great transition or whatever, a great segue into thinking about like when you're talking with clients, a client calls you and says, here's what we need. This is the video that I need. And sometimes they think they know what they need, but what they need is they need somebody like us to kind of like, poke at what it is that they're saying, see if there are any holes, and see if is that really what they need? Like, why that video? Like, why do you think that that's the right piece? And what is it going to do for you? And what is success, for this project? And describe that for me, because if at the end of the day you think that you need a Steadicam operator, or you need drone footage, or you need like whatever the thing is that you need, if I can help you save money or help you make a smarter, more strategic decision based on what your goals are and what your ultimate hopes and dreams are for doing video or for doing this campaign, would that be worth it? And I'm sure every client would be like, oh yeah, I mean, if you can talk me out of this, I don't know how you can, because I think that's what we need. But asking good questions in that process is so important, which I'm sure you've learned as well.
For sure. Yeah. I mentioned before, like, I think of ourselves as a strategy first production company. And a lot of that is understanding what your client's objectives are and understanding the audience that you're trying to communicate with, and then figuring out basically, the best ways to achieve that objective while resonating with that audience. So for sure, that's definitely
So
important.
I'm curious too, you talk about SEO, and I have a hard time with this concept. I get that SEO works. When we were doing wedding films, SEO, we were like in our region, like we would get searched all the time. We got so many inquiries. Today, most of our work is corporate. And what that means is like, we're doing all sorts of different kinds of, our bread and butter are these brand stories, these like short, documentary style marketing pieces that a company wants to put on their homepage or their about page as part of a campaign, or just like as like a brand awareness piece. The inquiries that we get from SEO are because like our SEO might be like, Michigan videographer or Detroit video business or something like that. So it's very generic how people are finding us, meaning they're not typing in like brand film, or corporate brand film or something like that. So I say all that to say, do you know, like a rough percentage wise, out of the people that are reaching out to you via finding you from SEO, search engine stuff, what percentage of those have turned into like ideal clients for you?
So I would say about half of the inquiries that come in would be, let's say, qualified leads, someone that that has
decent,
a budget that can afford our services, that's going to align. I think that's about right. I mean, every now and then we get like a one-line email that says, I have a new product, or I'm a startup and I want to do a 30-second video. How much does it cost? And gives no other information. And you can kind of say, maybe this isn't going to be a good fit. Maybe we'll follow up with like getting a little more information from them. And like in the past, we've done a fair bit of music videos. So we get the occasional like very low budget music video that we, are happy to refer off to another production company, but probably can't help with. But for the most part, you can kind of tell if it's coming from an agency or an established company and it's the marketing manager or director and they're reaching out with a bit of a brief and just checking on availability. Yeah, I would say probably about 50%.
All right, well, then just never mind all the things that I just said. 50% is really good. I mean, yeah, I would say for us...
I wish I could give more advice about SEO. I really have no idea how we lucked into this position. I think part of it is that we've been, in business for a long time, and that over the years, more from the short films that we've produced that have been in festivals or music videos, like we've had some media coverage, and so those links will come back to us from, I don't know, like Rolling Stone magazine or some other things like that that if they have high authority, that will kind of link to us. The other advice for SEO I would give is, have all the right like listings pages. So, be on Google pages and try to collect reviews and have your listings. I'm trying to think Yelp and some other places that probably no one is actually looking for you on Yelp, but the fact that Yelp and those other kind of listing sites link back to you is going to help with the SEO, even if no one's finding you on those platforms. But I think we just lucked into it. I really can't give trustworthy SEO advice. That's not my area of expertise.
My only last thought on SEO is, like, I think it's a fine, like, if you know anything about it, like, I know there's, courses out there, there's YouTube videos, whatever, that will teach you. I think that's a fine strategy as long as it's like not your main strategy, because when you're building a business, SEO, kind of all this like content stuff, you're just hoping that the right person finds it and then finds you and reaches out, and then they like what you have to say and how much you cost and all that stuff. What you have control of is like who you're meeting and introduce yourself to, and figuring out like who do you want to work with. And so being proactive, I feel like SEO is kind of reactive. It's like, hey, let's create something that over time can actually work. And especially
it's the long
game, right? Which I think is smart. Sure. But I think when people make that like one of their top objectives, like, oh, we got to do Facebook ads and we need, sweet SEO. It's like those things can work if you have, a good system set up, and especially for SEO, that might take a little bit more time. So what I would recommend, especially just starting out, is like you get your butt out of your chair and like, go out the front of your door and start meeting people, start connecting, find out where you can add value and how you can do that. And like, that's going to get you the quickest wins. That's going to help you build trust. People want to work with people that they trust, and it's hard to trust a website that has good work and it looks and seems like, I'm not seeing any reviews or testimonials, because you're new, so you don't have a lot of that stuff. So you got to put yourself out there and say, hey, this is awkward. This isn't necessarily how I want to go about getting business, but I know that it's valuable to build relationships and to build trust like this. And that's, at least for us, I mean, taking people out to coffee and lunch and really just saying like, we want to be a part of something great. We want to work with great people that care about the work that they're doing. They care about their clients. Who are those people? Where are they? How can we hang out? How can we get to know? How can we learn? And then how can we serve those people? I feel like if you do both and, that's the best case scenario. But a lot of times we don't have the time to do both and. So if you're just going to do one, that's my last. When you get off the SEO.
Yeah. I agree that so much of this business is relationship based, especially if you're going to be working with agencies or marketing directors at companies or something like that. Establishing a relationship so that they trust you and they want to come back to you and that they'll refer you to other people. Super important.
All right, so you guys, let's talk about niching. I mean, you say niche, I say niche because the riches are in the niches, not that riches are in the niches. The whole saying wouldn't even work. So talk about the kind of work that you guys are doing, and then sounds like maybe you've got some things in the works, so that you can maybe potentially reach a more targeted audience.
Totally. So up until now, all the things that we're talking about is really lessons that I've learned throughout almost the entire journey of video production, and within the last year I've really been thinking less about how can we make a good video, which is, I would say, for the first 10 years in business I was really focused on the craft of production, what lenses, what lighting, what storytelling tools, really focusing on making good work. And then within the last year, I've started thinking less just about making good work and like, how am I building a business with intention? And I started by listening to this podcast called the Two Bobs podcast.
I thought you were going to say I
highly recommend it.
Business podcast.
Once you finish the Grow Your Video Business podcast and you've listened to all the episodes, check out Two Bobs. It's more focused on advertising agencies, but I got a lot of useful information from there. And like, it just seems the wisdom going around is specialization, finding your positioning, finding your niche. And we also picked up the book Traction and started doing the Vision VTO, Vision Traction Organizer. Yeah, Vision Traction Organizer. There you go. And so we started coming up and realized that we almost have like two distinct sets of values, or that we could kind of shift them around in different ways. And when we were thinking about, okay, if we were going to, as an exercise, like develop a new brand and create a niche, what would it be? And we've done a lot of work for entertainment brands, for toy companies, for video game designers. And then one of our values, my business partner Ben is particularly like fun and energetic dude. One of our values was fun. So we decided we're creating this new brand. It's in the process of launching, called The Fun Machine. And so The Fun Machine is like specifically targeting entertainment brands, and we're going to help them use video to sell fun. So this is like a new experiment that is going to be a more narrow niche than Black Box. Black Box going to keep doing its thing and serving a wider clientele of like high quality video production, but then focusing specifically on the niche of games and fun. We're creating the Fun Machine for that. And I think the biggest argument, or the two biggest arguments that resonate with me in terms of why you should niche or why positioning is so important is, first of all, the value of having a clearly defined prospect.
Yeah.
So we know with this brand exactly the kind of companies that we want to work with. Whereas, like, if I was trying to think, who can we help with Black Box? There's so many different kinds of companies in the medical field and packaged goods and automobile that we work with on a regular basis, that the Fun Machine is really like, okay, let's look at the best toy developers and how can we target them. And then when they come see your work, it's clear that you are speaking directly to them. You're talking their language, you understand their market, and they can see their needs in the work that you do. And that kind of specialization also removes the competition. So if you are sort of the only one in that space, then they're not, comparing you as much to other people that you can sort of be substituted for, because you're the only one that does your specific thing better than anyone else.
Dude, I love that.
So
I think it's so good for multiple reasons. The ones you obviously shared, but also, for me, like, I think about the process too, like hiring people, building a team, for everybody on your team to know exactly, what kind of clients that we're working with, the problems that they have, and how we solve them, whether it's through our strategy meetings and workshops that we're having with them, or when we go to production. To an extent, we want every project to feel custom and to feel unique for that client and for their market. But to have your team know how we shoot these and how we edit these and how we deliver these, and the little things that we can add that bring extra value because we're familiar with this market. I think it's just so smart, and very few of us get to experience that on a deep level because we're doing all of the things for all of the companies, and it's just hard to know, like, what really is the thing that will help us stand apart, or how can we, outside of being super nice and delivering on time or earlier, or throwing in in additional behind the scenes edit or something like that, like, how else can we really serve these people when you become really familiar with a niche and you hang out with those people, like you go to networking things with that niche in the entertainment industry, like you speak the same language and you get to feel the same things and just understand on a completely different level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think especially with marketing toys to kids, there's all kinds of legal considerations about how you can market for that audience. So, being positioned where we've been through that a few times, and we understand that, like, if the toy doesn't make a sound, we can't add a sound effect that's not there because that might be misleading advertising. Those kinds of things that you only learn through doing, puts you at an advantage when you're working with your next client. But in our business, I want to be careful not to, let's say, productize the production too much, the creative, let's say. I think it's important to have an expertise about the industry, to maybe develop a framework for the creativity that you can apply to multiple projects. But, like, this was another one of the values that we uncovered, is that the craft matters, and that we like getting to understand the individual client needs, because all brands are different, and then figuring out their audiences, and then designing a custom bespoke campaign that's going to speak to them specifically, that wouldn't work for the competition. And so there were a couple things that you mentioned there. One is sort of more about the expertise side of things, but one is about, I guess, productizing. And I have a lot of respect for the business that you've grown, and I think there are a lot of coaches out there that will say that the best way to scale your business is to productize it. And I think you're doing that with some of your courses. I have a great deal of respect for that, and I think you found a way to share your knowledge and turn that in a way that it can also be profitable. But as far as the creative is concerned, I don't want to be packaging it and selling it like a factory. I think there are companies that do that and they can make a lot of money that way. But for us, it's really about, like I mentioned, getting to understand our clients, their ideal audience, their specific offering, and then developing something unique and original that's just for them. The way that I think about it, like in a big, long-term, audacious goal would be to produce work that's on the caliber of like a Super Bowl commercial. And I don't think you get there by productizing your videos. You have to get there by prioritizing your creativity and doing something that's totally out of the box.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that the things that you can control, like you talk about a framework, I mean, that's the thing where it's like, okay, every project or every new client, we take them through this framework so that we really can figure out like what is going to serve them best. And that thing that's going to serve them best in your case is probably going to be super custom and super unique. And then so then at that point it's like, okay, well, who knows what the end product is going to be? But there is a part of that is probably always somewhat the same, right? Meaning if you're using a framework that's going to lead you to a place of discovery of like, oh my gosh, like we were thinking that we needed a brand story, but in this case we need like 20, 10-second, like, funny little clips or whatever the case may be. I had a coaching call earlier today and we were talking about these two distinct things. The woman I was coaching was like, I've got, I want to do these like, these brand films, but then I also want to do these like, very short cookie cutter type videos. And so I really was just like, kept like kind of digging in like, well, what do you, at the end of the day, like, what do you want? Like in a year from now, like what kind of business do you want to be running? And she definitely was finding more fulfillment in the handcrafted, very creative, like there is no video that's going to look the same. But then she was drawn to like, well, I want to also like, I would potentially want to create something I could sell. And I'm like, well, if you're the one that's doing all the creating and you're in the center of this, like these brand stories, you can't sell that business because you are the thing that's required. If you want to build something that you can hire people and the business can run without you, my suggestion is to start simple and not make the creative the thing that sets you apart, right? But like the quality or the the fact that people can get really nice productions, but they don't need to be super handcrafted. There are plenty of businesses that need that. So it was fun to. I'm coming in kind of hot off of that call because even for my own business, like we were last year. Where my creative director, who was with me for 10 years, where we had visions of grandeur of like these are the kind of films that we want to build and handcrafted and all this stuff. And then when he left, I was like, oh, he's gone. And he was the one that was kind of leading the charge on those creative, pieces. So what kind of business where do I want our focus to be today? And so that's forced me to ask some really hard questions of like, do I want to have a business that like maybe I could sell one day, or at least where the creative pressure to always deliver something. So do I want, which one do I want? And so those are definitely questions that I've been able to ponder and sort of build the thing that works for us.
Yeah, I've got two things to say there. I think the first thing is you're absolutely right that even if the creative ends up being quite different, there is always a framework with which you're working within. Those kind of constraints are super helpful to understand, so that you don't just go off on such a tangent that you're not really fulfilling the original objective and like helping your clients in the end. So that kind of framework is important, but where that leads in terms of the creative treatment or approach, can be quite different. The other thing, just in terms of running your business and maybe being able to sell a business one day, this is sort of the mindset shift that I've experienced in the past year. I used to be of the mindset that I wanted to keep a low overhead, not have like a full-time team. When my first son was born, I was able to take a month off and go to Mexico and just like relax with the family. And I loved that. And I didn't feel guilty about staff back home thinking, well, what kind of work am I going to be doing? We had a studio in Toronto. I didn't have a studio in Montreal at the time. So there wasn't a lot of overhead to worry about. And I loved that freedom. But now my mindset has totally shifted to how can I build the systems and the team so that I can still step away if I need to, but that the company can keep operating without me in place. And so, like, I think one of the most important things I can do over the next few years is document those systems and build the team so that we can bring the clients through that creative process without me necessarily being or my business partner Ben being the like single point of failure anywhere along that journey.
Good. I think that's such good advice. And it's funny because you whatever direction you're drawn to, whether it's like we want to do these like highly creative, bespoke pieces, or no, like we want to just do shorter, quicker to market type pieces, whatever that route is, creating the processes and documenting like how to do that so that you're not the center of that cog. That's the deal. Like in my mind, like to not be required, so you can step away from your business so that you can choose the work that you want to be a part of, the get to instead of the have to, right? That in my mind, that's why I do this whole thing, is so that people can actually make a choice instead of like, I've got to take this job because it's the only opportunity that we have. And one great step toward that is to document the process, figure out what's repeatable and what can you hand off and delegate, so that you can start flexing that muscle of like, oh, maybe I don't have to do all of the things. Maybe there are other people that are actually better than me and that can actually help take this business forward. Speaking,
so this is where I've got a question for you, if I can jump in here. I got a lot of value from the episode where you talked about delegating and you were burning DVDs, but trying to watch a film with your wife. It's
probably The Office,
time,
actually.
And like your initial like foray into delegating, let's say. So I've hired many people in the technician's role over the years, right? Like we need multiple cameras, sound, gaffers, hair, makeup, wardrobe, whatever that is. I had one project with Air Canada and Cirque du Soleil where we got a call 10 days before the shoot. It was greenlit 7 days before. And on the day of filming, we were in the Air Canada airplane hangar with a Dreamliner 747. We had a dozen Cirque du Soleil performers, and there were 75 people on the call sheet. So like, I know what it's like to hire a team of specialists for a specific project. But if you think about it, it's always the client that's paying for those roles, right? It's something that's for that specific project. But now I'm thinking about like, how can I build the team? What's my first hire? How do I go about having someone who Black Box is going to be paying for, that's going to be representing our organization? And so I think like hiring and managing people and developing that culture is a skill set all of its own, and not one that I've really had an opportunity to flex that muscle. So what advice do you have about hiring that first employee, or thinking about like setting someone up for success, and what would you do if you were your company and you needed one more person? How would you go about doing that first?
Well, I think part of it, if you've gone through Traction, there's another book called Rocket Fuel, which is a very helpful book in understanding personality, like how you're wired. In Rocket Fuel, it talks about there's a visionary in every business and there's an integrator in every business. And sometimes it's the same person. That was an epiphany for me to realize that, I had done the work of an integrator for the last, since I started my business. The integrator is the person that gets the stuff done. The visionary is the one who comes up with the idea like, hey, I should start a video company, and oh man, we could create this thing and we could make it like this. And like, that's the visionary mindset, but also usually a million miles an hour ideas for days, like could never make anything because it's just like too busy thinking about like all of the things. At some point, the integrator is like, okay, dude, like enough ideas, like let's just do the thing. So for me, like when I discovered there was a difference there, what I also was taught by Gino, the guy that wrote the book Traction and Rocket Fuel, if you are a visionary, you need somebody to help you come down to earth. If you're for me, I was like, but I've done this. I've been doing this for years and years. But I would also say one of the most frustrating things was having things on the back burner, things that I wanted to do that weren't getting done. And I was like, I only have so much time in the day. I have become so much a believer in having really good assistants, right? like an executive assistant, virtual assistant, somebody to help take the bulk of the day-to-day tasks, things that I would do, like email or following up on, an email that I had sent to an employee or a client, somebody that can just kind of keep me, allow me to focus on the thing that helps make the business money as much as possible. So to like help me avoid all of the distractions, because I'm already super easily distracted. I hop into email, or I start looking at my calendar, start trying to move things around, start messing up projects because I'm like, hey, you guys think about this? And they're like, no, don't talk to us. Like we're just doing our thing. That's not even your job. You're supposed to just be trying to find more work for us, or envisioning what the future looks like for us. It's like, oh yeah, remember my job. So I think that depending on how you're wired, your job as, CEO, founder, partner, whatever, it should be to try to free up as much of your time to stay in your sweet spot as possible. So if that means like, if you're editing all your projects, you need to find an editor. Right, that's going to free up so much time. If you're producing and project managing, and you're talking with clients and trying to figure out, what do they think about the first draft, and then communicating that to the editor, and then talking to the editor and giving that person more creative direction, and it's just like that's consuming most of your time. But your biggest skill set is being on set, or it's going to networking meetings, or it's creating content that's going to get found by people that are searching for your website. Like whatever the one or two things that you're really good at, that maybe you could find somebody at one day at one point to replace you in those things. But like right now, those are things that you could probably charge the most money for. You can't charge a lot of money for you hopping in your email and answering emails. You can't, somebody's not going to pay you a ton of money to keep a calendar, up to date. I mean, those are like important things, but like Gino would say, those are $20 an hour tasks. Those are things that somebody like your genius is like, man, like how can we create this? How can we create a handcrafted, very unique experience for this client? That's your expertise. People will pay a lot of money for that, but people aren't going to pay a lot of money for you to say like, hey, maybe we should shoot this tomorrow instead of Wednesday because it's a lot easier on the team. That's an important thing. So like, don't hear me downplay that, because for the person who's the right fit for that, like that's a very valuable thing. But you started a company because you were really good at a couple of things that like most people aren't really good at. And it's tied directly to, the video creation or ideation process. So long way of answering your question. For me, I'm finding somebody who can assist scheduling, taking care of the day-to-day. Next level, that person might be like a business operations person, somebody who really is. They're talking to legal. They're finding out what insurance we need to have. They're making sure our P&Ls look good. They're reporting to me and saying like, hey, this is working out. If there's employee issues, they're talking to the business operations person. They're not talking to me. If we're hiring a new employee, they're talking to business. That's the person who's hiring and firing. Sure, like I'm going to sit in on an interview or whatever, but the decisions that are required to manage and operate the business day to day, again, aren't even tied to video production. They're just the things that you need to pay the electric bill. You need to talk to the landlord to make sure your lease is paid. When I hired that position 6 years ago, that it changed the trajectory of our business. And since then, I've gotten better and better at saying like, oh yeah, business operations person, that's really good. But what if I had an assistant that was also helping me on more of like inside of my email and cleaning up and staying on top of all of the things that I used to have emails that would sit in my inbox for like 2 or 3 weeks because I didn't know exactly I didn't have the time to think through. It wasn't a quick response. And now I've got somebody who's like, hey, this email's still in there. Do you want me to respond to him? You want me to set up a meeting? And for me to send a Voxer back and just talk for 2 minutes and say, you know what, this is what this person needs. Can you just, say this or schedule the meeting or do the thing? Stuff gets done. And I feel like I'm staying a lot more in my sweet spot than I ever have before. Amen.
Well, thank you for the free coaching session. This is No, I think that totally aligns with my thinking on it. And basically, trying to delegate kind of the lowest hanging fruit, or the things that I can that are repetitive tasks that we can easily get off of our plate. It started for me with just documenting the processes, so I can sort of look at how am I spending my time, and then figuring out of those tasks, what is it that I can train someone else to do. So I think that's the direction I'm moving, but it's great to get a little bit of
I get a little excited because it has been very freeing, but it's been a arduous process getting there. I mean, there's years of frustration of doing all the things, assuming that I had to do all the things because I started the business. So I'm the best person for those things. And I'm not going to pay somebody else to do that. I can do that really, really quick. But when you start adding all of those things, it compounds, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of time that I'm spending doing things that aren't even related closely to creative or to production or any of that kind of stuff. Josh, I don't want to go because I feel like we're just kind of, uncovering some, there's just lots of gold nuggets in here. I appreciate your openness and even your willingness to push back on me a little bit. That's good. That's really good. Where can people keep up with what you got going on and just kind of stalk you, especially as you get ready to launch this new brand, which I'm excited to hear how that goes. I feel like that's going to be a really good move for you guys.
So blackboxproductions.tv is my website. We've got thefunmachine.tv, which is live now, but still a work in progress, I would say. And then I think the best way to connect with me would be over LinkedIn. Josh Usheroff.
Awesome.
On LinkedIn.
Cool. This has been super fun. What do you want to leave us with today, my friend?
Okay, so I think the last thing I want to talk about is really just like additional sources of learning for your listeners. During the pandemic, I joined a bunch of different Facebook groups and sort of message boards for people in the video production space, yours included. And I found I got a lot of pleasure from responding to people or giving people advice who were just starting out. People would have a question about how do you manage media? How do you send files to clients? How do you deal with a client that's not paying? And I was able to answer that, and I could tell that the answers I was giving were helpful, and that gave me some personal fulfillment and helped me de-stress in some otherwise sleepless nights in the early days of the pandemic. So in that spirit, I'm going to recommend some additional reading and listening to your listeners. So obviously, once you've caught up on Grow Your Video Business podcast, there's a whole bunch of episodes you can listen to there first. But the first podcast that probably I wouldn't have discovered Grow Your Video Business if I hadn't listened to this one first was the Two Bobs podcast. It's from Blair Enns, who wrote the Win Without Pitching Manifesto, which is an awesome book, and I highly recommend it. It's also about, positioning and changing your sales process. And David C. Baker, who wrote a book called The Business of Expertise. We talked a lot on this call about expertise, so I think that would be a good place to go, those books and that podcast. The Engage Video Marketing podcast with Ben Amos, also a good listening, much more on the strategy side of things and incorporating video. And then some books. If you've been listening to the show, you already know Traction with Gino Wickman, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I like The Future with Chris Do, and the Akimbo podcast with Seth Godin. That's sort of, this podcast and those are really where I'm getting a lot of my inspiration and
love it.
Learning
super
every day.
Helpful. Those are all good recommendations. I think I listened to, or at least know of, I think every single one of those. Really good stuff. Josh, thank you again for sharing today. This was really, really good. Fun to hang out, fun to meet you, and excited for your future success.
I really want to thank you for having me on this podcast. I don't have a book or a course to sell or anything like that. So being invited on this podcast gave me the time to think about what it is that I want to talk about, look back on my experience and lessons learned. So it was really a great opportunity to sort of crystallize my own thoughts, and thank you. I hope your listeners found some value in it.
All right, thank you for hanging out on this episode. Remember, we have show notes for each and every episode. You can click on the show notes, and there's all the links and the things that we discussed in there. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook, leave a comment. Let me know, what was your big takeaway from this episode? Like, what is your best growth hack? Like, do you have your own growth hack? Like Josh shared, for him, it's in patience, playing the long game. But what about you? What has worked for you? I would love for you to leave a comment. Other people, they can see that stuff, and maybe you can help teach us all. That would be incredible. Leave a comment or review. Let me know. Speaking of reviews, here is one that I would like to read that is from BG 333333333. I think I got all the threes right. There were a lot of threes there, BG. Let's see. BG says, game changing. This is a 5-star review. I have been listening to this podcast for a few years, and it helped me charge more and value the whole process of pre-production and strategy much more. Really valuable insights from hosts and guests. It opens up all kinds of rabbit holes to dig into further. This podcast inspired me to join the Studio Sherpas community of video businesses. Definitely a cheat code to listen to this. Amazing, BG33333. If you want to join the community and meet a bunch of other people, we have a virtual community. You can find that at studiosherpas.com/community, and hop in there, meet other people. It is a really cool people. There are people in there. It is a really cool people. Did I just say that? The people in there are adding value, helping each other, serving each other. And I hop in there once in a while, and it is a great time. So get over there if you're not. If you haven't considered the Onward Summit, our in-person event, it's coming up June 5th through the 8th. I did say 8th, not 8th. Anyway, whatever. You can get all the information on the Onward Summit. I would love to meet you personally. Also, I'm a hugger, so it might be awkward for a second, but I will probably go in for a hug, so don't be surprised. You can learn more about the Onward Summit if you go to studiosherpas.com/onward. And that's all. I'll see you on next week's episode. Promise it's going to be a good one. And onward and upward until then. Okay? All right. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon. See ya.